Elena Martinez didn't know that the man watching her from the corner booth was the most feared alpha king in North America. She didn't know that his eyes had been following her every movement for the past hour, cataloguing the way she flinched when Viktor Morozov raised his voice. And she certainly didn't know that the golden warmth spreading through her chest every time their gazes met meant she had just found her fated mate. She only knew that she needed to stay invisible. The underground club reeked of cigarette smoke and expensive cologne, the kind of place where men in $1,000 suits made deals that destroyed lives. Elena kept her eyes down as she weaved between tables, balancing a tray of vodka that cost more than her monthly rent. Her uniform was too tight, borrowed from another girl who'd disappeared last week without explanation. Nobody talked about the girls who disappeared. "Little mouse?" Victor's voice cut through the din of conversation. Elena's stomach dropped as she approached his table, where 3 other men sat in silence. Viktor Morozov was everything dangerous wrapped in a designer suit, pale eyes that missed nothing, hands that had never known honest work, and a smile that promised pain. "You're looking particularly lovely tonight." Elena forced herself to meet his gaze, her training kicking in. Acknowledge, but don't encourage. Serve, but don't linger. Survive another night. "Thank you, Mr. Morozov. What can I bring you?" Such manners. Victor's fingers traced the rim of his glass, and Elena's skin crawled. "I was just telling my associates about my expanding business ventures. We're recruiting fresh talent for our Eastern operations." The way he said recruiting made Elena's blood turn to ice. She'd heard whispers, rumours about girls being shipped overseas, about families receiving anonymous payments and told to ask no questions. Her hand trembled slightly as she refilled his glass. "Steady hands are important in my line of work," Victor continued, his voice deceptively casual. "Almost as important as loyalty. Speaking of which, how is your dear sister Sophia, still attending that expensive private school?" Elena's world tilted. Victor shouldn't know about Sophia, shouldn't know about the school Elena worked 3 jobs to afford, the one place where her 16-year-old sister was supposed to be safe from the violence that had claimed their neighbourhood. "She's fine," Elena managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sure she is. Beautiful girl, such potential." Victor's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "In fact, I've been thinking she might benefit from some of my mentorship. Young women need guidance in this harsh world." The implication hit Elena like a physical blow. Her vision blurred at the edges, panic rising in her throat. This wasn't random. Victor had been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment to spring his trap. "I should get back to—" "Sit!" The command was soft but absolute. Elena's knees buckled, and she found herself perched on the edge of a chair, her tray clutched like a shield. "You see, little mouse, your family owes me a considerable debt. Your apartment lease, your sister's tuition, even the groceries in your refrigerator, they're all courtesy of loans I've graciously extended." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd wondered how they'd managed to stay afloat after their parents died, how the bills had mysteriously continued to be paid even when her wages fell short. Now the terrible truth crystallized. They'd never been surviving. They'd been owned. "I don't understand," she lied. "Of course you do. You're a smart girl, Elena, smart enough to know that debts must be repaid." Victor leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "And I've decided how you're going to repay yours." That's when she felt it, a sudden warmth flooding through her chest, gold and honey and safety she'd never experienced before. Her head turned involuntarily toward the source, and her breath caught. The man in the corner booth was watching her with eyes like molten amber, his dark hair catching the dim light of the club. He was impossibly handsome, in a way that made her forget to breathe. But more than that, he radiated a power that made every instinct she possessed sit up and take notice. Dangerous. Everything about him screamed dangerous, but not to her. The thought came from nowhere, irrational and impossible. She didn't know this man, had never seen him before tonight, but something deep in her chest recognized him like coming home after years of wandering in the cold. Their eyes met across the smoky room, and the world narrowed to just that connection. The golden warmth in her chest flared brighter, spreading through her limbs like sunlight, and for one impossible moment Eleanor forgot about Victor, forgot about the threat hanging over Sophia, forgot about everything except the way this stranger was looking at her like she was precious, like she mattered. "Fascinating," Victor murmured, following her gaze. His voice had gone cold, calculating. "It seems you've caught someone's attention. How fortunate!" The spell shattered. Elena jerked her attention back to Victor, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and fear. She'd been staring like a love-struck teenager while her sister's life hung in the balance. "I need to get back to work," she stammered, starting to rise. "Sit," Victor repeated, and this time there was iron in his voice. "We're not finished discussing your sister's future. You see, girls like Sophia, young, beautiful, with that particular look men pay premium prices for, they're quite valuable in my business. I could set her up very comfortably overseas. She'd never want for anything." Eleanor's vision went white around the edges. "No? No?" Victor's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "I don't think you understand your situation, little mouse. You owe me, and I'm offering you a way to pay. Your sister could have a very lucrative career ahead of her. She's 16. The words came out as a growl, surprising them both with their ferocity. "Age of consent in many countries. Don't be so provincial." Victor's hand shot out, gripping Elena's wrist with bruising force. "You seem to be under the impression that you have choices here. Let me clarify. You don't. Your sister will be recruited one way or another. The only question is whether you cooperate willingly or whether we have to be more persuasive." Elena's breath came in short, panicked bursts. This couldn't be happening. Sophia was supposed to be safe, supposed to be protected from the darkness that had swallowed their parents. Elena had sacrificed everything to build walls around her sister, and now those walls were crumbling like paper. "Please," she whispered, hating the way her voice broke. "Please don't hurt her. I'll do anything. Take me instead." "Oh, little mouse." Victor's thumb stroked over her pulse point, feeling the frantic beat of her heart. "I'm taking you both." The club seemed to tilt around her, the music and conversation fading to a dull roar. Elena stared at Victor's pale, satisfied face and felt her world collapse into dust. 3 years of working herself to the bone, 3 years of careful planning and desperate hope, and it had all been for nothing. They'd been mice in his maze all along, and now he was tired of playing. Movement caught her peripheral vision. The dark-haired stranger was standing, his tall frame unfolding with liquid grace. Even across the crowded room, Eleanor could feel his attention like a physical touch, warm and steady and impossibly comforting. Their eyes met again, and this time she saw something that made her breath catch. Recognition. Not just awareness, but knowledge, as if he'd been looking for her his entire life and had finally found what he'd been searching for. The golden warmth in her chest pulsed once, strong and sure, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite her own. "Mr. Morozov." The stranger's voice cut through the noise of the club like a blade, cultured and controlled, but carrying an undertone that made everyone within earshot fall silent. He'd moved with impossible quiet, appearing beside their table without Elena even seeing him approach. "I believe the lady is needed elsewhere." Victor's grip on Elena's wrist tightened painfully, his knuckles going white. "This is a private conversation." "Is it?" The stranger's amber eyes flicked to Elena's trapped wrist, and something cold and deadly flickered in their depths. "It seems more like harassment to me." Elena couldn't breathe. The air between the two men crackled with tension, predator recognizing predator, and she was caught between them like prey. But the strange warmth in her chest only grew stronger when the dark-haired man stepped closer, as if her very blood recognized his presence as safety. "Walk away," Victor said softly, his voice carrying years of practiced menace. "This doesn't concern you." The stranger smiled, and Elena's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that preceded violence, beautiful and terrible and absolutely without mercy. "Everything about her concerns me," he said, and Elena felt those words settle into her bones like truth. The confrontation in the club had ended with Victor's reluctant retreat and Eleanor's narrow escape, but the fear followed her home like a living thing. She climbed the rusted fire escape to their fourth-floor apartment, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the key. The building was the kind of place where broken windows stayed broken and the heat worked when it felt like it. Sophia was waiting in their tiny living room, curled on the second-hand couch with a chemistry textbook in her lap. At 16, she had their mother's dark hair and gentle eyes, but tonight those eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and something that made Eleanor's chest tighten with dread. Bruises. Purple finger marks circled Sophia's wrist like a grotesque bracelet, and there was a cut on her lower lip that hadn't been there this morning. "Sophia!" Elena's voice came out strangled. She dropped her purse and rushed to her sister's side, reaching for the injured wrist with trembling fingers. "Who did this to you?" Sophia pulled back instinctively, then seemed to catch herself. "It's nothing, just some guys after school. They said they had a message for you." Elena's blood went cold. "What message?" "They said to tell you that Mr. Morozov is tired of waiting." Sophia's voice was small, scared. "Elena, who is Mr. Morozov? Why are men asking about you at my school?" Before Elena could answer, a soft knock echoed from the fire escape window. Both sisters froze, their eyes meeting in mutual terror. Nobody used the fire escape unless they were trying to avoid being seen. Elena moved protectively in front of Sophia, grabbing a kitchen knife from the counter. "Stay behind me." The knock came again, patient but insistent. Elena crept toward the window, weapon raised, and nearly dropped it when she saw who was waiting in the darkness. It was him, the stranger from the club. He stood on the narrow metal grating as if he belonged there, his expensive suit somehow unmarked by the climb. In the moonlight streaming through her dirty window, he looked like something out of a dream, beautiful and dangerous and impossibly real. Their eyes met through the glass, and that golden warmth bloomed in Elena's chest again, stronger this time. Her body moved without conscious thought, setting down the knife and reaching for the window latch. "Elena, don't," Sophia whispered urgently. "You don't know who he is." But Elena did know, in some way that had nothing to do with logic or reason. She knew the way she knew her own heartbeat, instinctive and certain. Her fingers worked the stubborn latch until it gave way with a screech of protest. "May I come in?" His voice was softer than it had been at the club, almost gentle, but it still carried that undertone of absolute authority. "I believe we need to talk." Elena stepped back wordlessly, and he moved through the window with liquid grace. Standing in their cramped living room, he seemed to fill the entire space, his presence overwhelming in a way that had nothing to do with his physical size. Sophia pressed closer to Elena's back. "Who is he?" The stranger's amber eyes found Sophia, and his expression softened with something that might have been sympathy. "My name is Dmitri Volkov, and you must be Sophia." Elena's world tilted on its axis. Volkov, she knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, whispered in back alleys and boardrooms with equal measures of fear and respect. "You're the Alpha King," she breathed. Dmitri inclined his head slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to be both acknowledgement and apology. "I am." Eleanor's knees went weak. The Alpha King. The man who controlled half the supernatural underworld in North America, who commanded loyalty from pack leaders across 3 countries, who was rumoured to have killed his own father in single combat for the right to rule. And he was standing in her living room. "I don't understand," Eleanor whispered. "What could you possibly want with us? We're nobody. We're nothing." Something dangerous flickered in Dimitri's eyes. "You are not nothing. Never say that again." The command was soft but absolute, carrying a weight that made Eleanor's breath catch. She'd spent 3 years believing she was worthless, invisible, disposable. Hearing those words from him felt like being struck by lightning. Elena." Sophia's voice was tight with fear. "What's happening?" Dimitri's gaze shifted between the sisters, taking in Sophia's bruises and Elena's obvious terror. "Viktor Morozov has made a mistake, several mistakes actually, but threatening you was the most significant." "You know about Viktor?" Elena's voice cracked. "I know he's been trafficking human girls to rival packs for the past 5 years. I know he's been using debt and intimidation to control families like yours. And I know that as of tonight, he's made you his target." Elena sank onto the couch beside Sophia, her legs refusing to support her weight any longer. "He says we owe him money. He says he owns our apartment, Sophia's school tuition, everything." "He's lying." Dimitri's voice was matter of fact. Or rather, he's telling a version of the truth that serves his purposes. Your parents didn't take loans from Viktor, Elena. They were murdered because they refused to. The words hit Elena like physical blows. "What?" "Your father discovered Viktor's trafficking operation through his work at the docks. When he threatened to expose it, Viktor had him killed. Your mother died trying to protect information that could have destroyed Viktor's network." Sophia made a small, wounded sound. Elena reached for her sister's hand, needing the contact as much as offering comfort. "That's impossible," Elena said, but even as the words left her mouth, pieces were falling into place. The way their parents had died, a car accident that had never quite made sense, the police investigation that had been closed with suspicious speed, the bills that had mysteriously continued to be paid after the insurance money ran out. "Viktor has been waiting," Dimitri continued, his voice gentle but relentless. "Letting you believe you were surviving on your own while he planned how best to use you. Tonight was simply the beginning of his collection process." Elena's breath came in short, sharp bursts. "He wants Sophia. He said she's valuable." "She is." Dimitri's gaze found Sophia again. "You have shifter blood, don't you? Dormant but present." Sophia's eyes went wide. "That's impossible. We're human." "Your great-grandmother wasn't." Dimitri's smile was sad. "I can smell it on you. Faint but unmistakable. Viktor can too, which is why he's been so patient. Dormant shifter blood is rare, and there are packs willing to pay enormous sums for girls who carry it." Elena felt sick. "We have to run. We have to disappear before—" "No!" The single word cut through her panic like a blade. "Running won't solve this. Viktor has resources, connections. He'll find you eventually, and next time you won't see him coming." "Then what do we do?" Elena's voice broke on the question. Dimitri was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those impossible amber eyes. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. "There is something you need to know about why I was at that club tonight, about why I interfered when I could have simply walked away." The golden warmth in Elena's chest pulsed stronger, as if responding to his proximity. "I don't understand." "You will." Dimitri moved closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. "May I touch you?" Every rational thought Elena possessed screamed at her to say no. He was the Alpha King, a man who could destroy her with a word, whose very presence in their apartment was enough to upend everything she thought she knew about the world. But the warmth in her chest sang yes, and her body was already leaning toward him before her mind caught up. "Okay," she whispered. Dimitri reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His palms were warm against her skin, calloused in a way that spoke of violence and strength, but impossibly gentle. The moment his skin touched hers, the world exploded into gold. Heat raced through Elena's veins, starting from the points of contact and spreading outward like wildfire. It wasn't painful, Quite the opposite. It felt like coming home, like finding something she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it was missing. She gasped, her hands flying up to cover his, and felt him shudder at the contact. "What is this?" she breathed. "The mate bond." His voice was rough, strained. "You're my fated mate, Elena, my other half, the one person in this world who was made for me as I was made for you." Elena stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. Mate bonds were stories, legends whispered among the supernatural community. They weren't real. They certainly didn't happen to ordinary human girls from broken families. "That's impossible," she whispered, echoing Sophia's words. "I thought so too." Dimitri's thumbs stroked over her cheekbones, and Elena had to fight not to lean into the touch. "I've lived for 32 years believing I would never find my mate, that I was destined to rule alone. And then I walked into that club tonight and saw you, and everything I thought I knew about my life changed." Sophia made a small sound from beside them, and Eleanor suddenly remembered they weren't alone. She tried to pull away from Dimitri's touch, but he held her gently in place. "Your sister needs to understand this too," he said softly, "because what happens next affects her as much as it affects you." Elena's heart clenched. Victor won't stop. No, he won't, but he also won't succeed. Dimitri's eyes blazed with a cold fire that made Eleanor's breath catch. "I can protect you, both of you, but only if you let me." "Why would you do that? Even if this mate bond thing is real, you don't know us. You don't owe us anything." "I owe you everything," Dimitri said simply. "You're my mate, my queen. Protecting you isn't a choice, Elena. It's as necessary as breathing." Queen. The word settled into Elena's bones like a physical weight. She thought of her second-hand clothes, her calloused hands, the way she'd spent the evening serving drinks to men who saw her as disposable. "I'm not queen material," she said, the words coming out smaller than she intended. "You're wrong." Dimitri leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "You've spent 3 years protecting your sister, sacrificing everything to keep her safe and happy. You've survived poverty and threats and impossible odds, and you've never once stopped fighting for the people you love. If that isn't queen material, I don't know what is." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, with such certainty and conviction. She'd spent so long believing she was nothing special, just another disposable girl in a city full of them. "I need time to think," she whispered. "Of course." Dimitri's hands fell away from her face, and Elena immediately missed the warmth. "But time is something we may not have much of. Victor won't wait long before making his next move." As if summoned by his words, Elena's phone buzzed on the coffee table. All 3 of them stared at it, and Elena's blood went cold as she recognized the number on the screen. "Victor." "Don't answer it," Dimitri said quietly. But Eleanor was already reaching for the phone, her hand moving without conscious thought. This was her reality. Bills to pay, threats to face, a sister to protect. Golden warmth and mate bonds were beautiful dreams, but Victor Morozov was her waking nightmare. "Hello?" Her voice came out steady, controlled. "Little mouse?" Victor's voice was silk over steel. "I hope you've had time to consider our earlier conversation. I've taken the liberty of ensuring your sister arrived home safely from school today, though she may have mentioned her escort was less than gentle." Elena's eyes found Sophia's bruised wrist, and rage burned through her like acid. "What do you want?" "Simple. You and your sister will report to my warehouse tomorrow night at midnight. Consider it an orientation for your new positions in my organization. And if we don't," Victor's laugh was soft and terrible, "then your sister's next escort won't be nearly so restrained. Do we understand each other?" The line went dead. Eleanor stared at the phone in her hand, her entire body numb with shock and terror. 12 hours. They had 12 hours before Victor collected on his threats. "What did he say?" Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Elena couldn't answer, couldn't find words for the hopelessness crushing her chest like a physical weight. But then warm hands covered hers, and she looked up to find Dmitri watching her with eyes like molten gold. "Tell me," he said simply. And for the first time in 3 years, Elena found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face this alone. Elena had agreed to dinner. Not a date, she'd been very clear about that, but a conversation, a chance to discuss Sophia's safety away from their cramped apartment where every word felt like it might shatter what little security they had left. She hadn't expected the private elevator that required a keycard to access. She certainly hadn't expected to find herself on the top floor of the city's most exclusive building, walking into a restaurant that didn't exist on any public directory. "This is too much," she whispered, as Dmitri guided her through a dining room that looked like it belonged in a palace. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables set with china that probably cost more than Elena's yearly income. The other diners moved with the fluid grace of wealth and power, their conversations conducted in the low murmur of people accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands. "You're underdressed," Dmitri said, and Elena's heart sank until she saw the gentle smile playing at his lips. Everyone else forgot to wear something beautiful enough to match the setting. Heat bloomed in Elena's cheeks. She'd agonized over her outfit for an hour, finally settling on the only dress she owned that wasn't second-hand. A simple black sheath she'd bought for their parents' funeral and worn maybe 3 times since. Standing next to women draped in designer gowns and jewellery that caught the light like captured stars, she felt like a child playing dress-up. "I don't belong here," she said quietly. Dmitri stopped walking and turned to face her fully. His amber eyes were serious, intense in a way that made her breath catch. "You belong wherever I am, always." The certainty in his voice should have been arrogant. Instead, it felt like a promise, solid and unshakable. Elena's chest tightened with an emotion she couldn't name, something between hope and terror, as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff and he was asking her to trust him to catch her if she fell. Their table was tucked into a private alcove overlooking the city lights. Elena had lived in those lights her entire life, but she'd never seen them from this height, this perspective. From here, the city looked beautiful instead of threatening, a scattered constellation of possibilities instead of a maze of dangers. "Tell me about your parents," Dmitri said after they'd ordered. His voice was carefully neutral, but Eleanor could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't small talk. This was intelligence gathering. Elena's hands tightened around her wine glass, wine that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. How they met, what they were like, how they died." Dmitri leaned forward slightly. "I know the official story. I want to hear yours." Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights and trying to organize memories that had been locked away for 3 years. Talking about her parents hurt. Not just the loss, but the way their deaths had been reduced to paperwork and police reports, their lives summarized in newspaper obituaries that barely captured who they'd really been. "They were good people," she said finally. "Dad worked at the shipping docks. Mum was a nurse. They met when he came into the emergency room with a broken arm, and she was the one who set it. They used to joke that he fell off that forklift on purpose just to meet her." Dmitri smiled softly. "They sound like they were happy." "They were. Even when money was tight, even when the neighbourhood got dangerous, they had each other. They had us." Elena's voice caught slightly. "The night they died, Dad had been working late. Mum went to pick him up because his truck wouldn't start. The police said they ran a red light, hit a semi, but Dad was the most careful driver I've ever known. He used to make us count to 3 at every stop sign, even when we were running late." "You never believed it was an accident." Elena shook her head. But there was no proof it was anything else. The truck driver wasn't hurt, wasn't drunk, wasn't even speeding. The intersection cameras mysteriously malfunctioned that night. The police investigation was closed within a week. She looked up at Dmitri. You really think Victor killed them? I know he did. Dmitri's voice was matter-of-fact, but there was something cold and deadly in his eyes. Your father had started asking questions about discrepancies in shipping manifests, girls who were supposed to be arriving in the city but never made it to their listed destinations. He was building a case, collecting evidence. Elena felt the familiar weight of grief settling on her chest, but this time it was edged with something sharper. Anger. They died because they tried to do the right thing. Yes, and you've been paying the price for their courage ever since. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. 3 years of struggling, of working herself to exhaustion, of watching Sophia grow up too fast because their parents weren't there to protect her childhood. All of it because Viktor Morozov couldn't tolerate the possibility of exposure. I hate him, she whispered, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Good. Dmitri reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The contact sent that familiar golden warmth racing through her veins, but this time it felt like strength instead of comfort. Anger is useful. It means you're ready to fight back instead of just survive. Eleanor stared down at their joined hands. His fingers were long, elegant, but she could see the calluses and scars that spoke of violence. This was a man who'd fought for everything he had, who understood what it meant to lose people he loved. Tell me about you, she said impulsively. I've heard the stories, but they can't all be true. Dmitri's smile was wry. Which stories? That you killed your father in single combat when you were 25, that you once wiped out an entire rival pack in one night, that you've never lost a fight. Elena hesitated. That you've never taken a mate because no one was strong enough to stand beside you. The first 3 are true. Dmitri's thumb stroked over her knuckles, and Eleanor had to fight not to shiver at the contact. The 4th was true until tonight. Eleanor's breath caught. Dmitri, I know you're afraid, he said quietly. I know this all seems impossible. A week ago, you were a human waitress worried about making rent, and now you're being told you're fated to be queen of the largest supernatural territory in North America. Anyone would be overwhelmed. Elena laughed, but there was no humour in it. Overwhelmed is an understatement. I don't know anything about your world. I've never even met another shifter besides you. You'll learn. I'll teach you. My pack will accept you because I choose you, and anyone who has a problem with that will answer to me personally. The casual way he said it, the absolute certainty that his will was law, should have been frightening. Instead, Eleanor found it oddly comforting. She'd spent so long feeling powerless, at the mercy of forces beyond her control. The idea of being protected by someone with real power, someone who could stand between her and the threats that had haunted her family for years, was intoxicating. What if I'm not strong enough? She asked. What if I disappoint you? Dmitri's eyes blazed with something fierce and protective. Impossible. You've already proven your strength, Elena. You've kept your family together against impossible odds. You've survived poverty and threats and loss without losing your compassion or your courage. You think that's weakness? Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd never thought of herself as strong. Strong people were the ones who didn't have to work 3 jobs to make ends meet, who didn't flinch when men raised their voices, who didn't lie awake at night worrying about bills and safety and whether tomorrow would bring fresh disasters. I cry when I'm scared, she said quietly. So do I sometimes. Elena looked up at him in surprise. You do? The night I became Alpha King, after the fight with my father was over, I sat alone in my office and cried for 3 hours. Not because I regretted what I'd done, he was a monster who deserved to die, but because I realised how alone I was going to be, how much I was going to have to sacrifice to keep my pack safe. Dmitri's voice was soft, vulnerable in a way that made Elena's chest ache. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life like that, alone with the crown and the responsibility and no one who could understand the weight of it. And now I have you. He lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "If you'll have me." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment, the choice point where she either stepped into the impossible or retreated into the familiar hell of her current life. She could feel the mate bond humming between them, that golden thread of connection that promised safety and love and a future she'd never dared to imagine. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed against the table. The sound was jarring in the quiet intimacy of their alcove, and Elena's stomach dropped when she saw the unknown number on the screen. "Don't answer it," Dimitri said, but Elena was already swiping to accept the call. "Elena?" Sophia's voice was tiny, terrified, barely recognizable. Elena's blood turned to ice. "Sophia, where are you? Why do you have a different phone?" "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered, and Elena could hear tears in her voice. "I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't know what else to do." "Where are you?" Eleanor was already standing, her chair scraping back across the floor. "I don't know. Some kind of warehouse. They took me from school. They said—" Sophia's voice broke. "They said if you don't come alone by midnight, they'll start cutting pieces off me." Eleanor's vision went white around the edges. The restaurant spun around her, crystal chandeliers and designer gowns blurring into meaningless shapes. This couldn't be happening. She'd been so careful, so protective. Sophia was supposed to be safe at school, surrounded by teachers and security guards and rules that kept the monsters of Elena's world at bay. "Put him on the phone," Elena said through gritted teeth. There was a rustle of movement, then Victor's voice poured through the speaker like poison. "Hello, little mouse. I hope you're enjoying your evening out. Such a lovely restaurant you chose, though I have to say your dining companion is quite the surprise." Eleanor's eyes snapped to Dimitri, who was already standing, his face a mask of cold fury. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known Victor was watching them. "Let her go," Elena said quietly. "I'm afraid that's not how this works. You see, your sister is my insurance policy, a guarantee that you'll honour our previous agreement." "What do you want?" "Simple. You come to the warehouse alone. No weapons, no backup, no Alpha Kings hiding in the shadows." Victor's voice turned silky, dangerous. "If you bring anyone else, if I even smell another shifter within 10 blocks of this location, your sister dies slowly. Do we understand each other?" Elena closed her eyes, feeling her world collapse into dust. "Yes." "Excellent. You have 2 hours." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone in her hand, her entire body numb with shock and terror. Around her, the restaurant continued its elegant ballet of wealth and privilege, completely unaware that her universe had just shattered. "Elena." Dimitri's voice was careful, controlled. "I have to go." Eleanor's voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat and emotionless. "I have to go alone." "No." The word was absolute, final. "We'll find another way." Eleanor looked up at him and felt something break inside her chest. He was beautiful and powerful and everything she'd never dared to dream she could have. But Sophia was her responsibility, her family, her entire world, before she'd ever known golden warmth and mate bonds existed. "There is no other way," she said quietly. "He has my sister." "Then we get her back. Together, I have resources, contacts, an entire pack." "He'll kill her the moment he senses you coming." Eleanor's voice cracked. "I won't risk Sophia's life, not even for this, not even for you." Dimitri stared at her, his amber eyes blazing with emotions she couldn't begin to name. Pain, rage, something that looked almost like pride. "You're asking me to let you walk into a trap," he said finally. "I'm not asking you anything." Eleanor picked up her purse with shaking hands. "This isn't your choice to make. You're my mate, my queen. Everything about your safety is my choice." Eleanor felt tears burning behind her eyes. "No, Sophia is my choice. She's been my choice every day for 3 years, and she's my choice now." She turned to leave, but Dimitri's voice stopped her. "Elena." When she looked back, his expression had shifted to something she'd never seen before. Desperate, vulnerable, almost broken. "If I go with you, he'll kill my family," she pleaded, the words tearing out of her throat like shards of glass. Dmitri pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with deadly precision. "He won't live long enough," he said quietly. Elena watched Dmitri's fingers move across his phone screen with deadly precision, each tap a death sentence being written in real time. The elegant restaurant around them seemed to fade into the background as she witnessed something that both terrified and mesmerized her, the transformation of the man who'd held her so gently into the Alpha King, whose name was whispered in fear across 3 countries. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Ending this." Dmitri's voice was cold, controlled, absolutely without mercy. "He threatened my mate's family. There are consequences for that." Elena's breath caught. The casual way he said "mate," as if it were already settled, as if her desperate flight towards certain death hadn't just shattered whatever future they might have had together. "Dmitri, you can't. If Victor senses your pack anywhere near that warehouse, he won't." Dmitri looked up from his phone, and Elena saw something in his amber eyes that made her blood run cold. "Because I've been tracking his operations for 6 months. I know exactly where he is, exactly how many men he has, and exactly how long it will take to eliminate every single one of them." Elena stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. "You've been hunting him." "Victor Morozov has been on my elimination list since he started trafficking shifter-blooded girls to rival packs. Your sister isn't his first victim, Elena. She's just going to be his last." The restaurant's ambient noise, soft conversation, clinking crystal, the gentle scrape of silverware, seemed impossibly distant. Elena felt like she was standing in a bubble of silence, watching Dmitri orchestrate Victor's destruction with the same calm efficiency most people use to order dinner. "How many girls?" she asked quietly. 17 that we know of, probably more." Dmitri's jaw tightened. All of them had dormant shifter blood. All of them were sold to foreign packs who use humans with our genetics for breeding programs. Elena's stomach turned. The scope of Victor's cruelty was beyond anything she'd imagined, and she'd spent 3 years believing he was a monster. "And you've just been waiting?" "Building a case, tracking his network, identifying his buyers and suppliers." Dmitri's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. "I needed evidence that would let me eliminate his entire operation, not just cut off one head of a hydra. But now he's taken something that belongs to me." The possessiveness in Dmitri's voice should have offended her. Instead, it sent heat racing through her veins, that golden warmth flaring brighter than ever before. "The investigation ends tonight." Elena's phone rang again, Victor's number flashing on the screen like a threat. She looked at Dmitri, who nodded once, his expression grim. "Answer it, but you're not going alone." Elena swiped to accept the call, her hand trembling. "Victor!" "Little mouse, I trust you're saying your goodbyes. The clock is ticking, and your sister is growing quite restless." Elena's vision went white at the edges. "Let me talk to her." "Of course." There was a rustle of movement, then Sophia's voice, small and terrified. "Elena, are you there?" "I'm here, baby. I'm coming for you." Elena's voice cracked. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. Scared, but okay. Elena, don't come here alone. Something's wrong. There are too many men, too many guns. This isn't just about us." Elena's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Victor's voice cut across the line before Sophia could answer. "Your sister is very observant. Yes, tonight serves multiple purposes. You see, I've recently learned that your new friend has been interfering in my business affairs. This seemed like an excellent opportunity to remove 2 problems with 1 solution." Elena's eyes snapped to Dmitri, who was already standing, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end. "You're using me as bait," Elena breathed. "Such a clever little mouse. You'll come to save your sister, and when your Alpha King follows, and he will follow because that's what these possessive beasts do, I'll be waiting with enough firepower to put him down permanently." Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Victor hadn't just taken Sophia to force Elena's compliance. This was a trap designed to eliminate the one person powerful enough to stop his operations permanently. "You're going to get us all killed," she whispered. "Only some of you," Victor said cheerfully. "You and your sister are quite valuable merchandise. I'm sure we can find buyers who appreciate your unique circumstances. A human queen is such a novelty." The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, her entire body numb with shock and terror. This wasn't just about family debt or trafficking operations. This was war, and Victor had just declared it using her sister as ammunition. "Elena." Dimitri's voice was gentle, but when she looked up, his eyes were blazing with a cold fury that made her breath catch. "What did he say?" "It's a trap. He's using Sophia to draw you out. He knows you'll come for me and he's ready for you." Elena's voice broke. "I've gotten us all killed." "No." Dimitri moved to her side with that liquid grace she was beginning to recognize, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "You've given me exactly what I needed." "What?" "An excuse to stop playing by the rules." Dimitri's smile was sharp, predatory, beautiful in its absolute lack of mercy. Victor made one critical error in judgment. "Which is?" "He assumed I would come for you." Dimitri's thumbs stroked over her cheekbones, and Eleanor felt that familiar golden warmth spread through her chest. "He was wrong." Eleanor blinked, confused. "I don't understand." "You're not going to the warehouse, Elena. Neither am I." Dimitri's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with satisfaction. "We're going to let Victor wait in his perfectly prepared trap while my pack eliminates his operations in 17 different locations across the city." Elena's mind reeled. 17? Every safe house, every warehouse, every front operation he's been running for the past 5 years. We've had surveillance on all of them for months. Tonight they all go dark simultaneously. Dimitri's expression was Arctic calm. "While Victor waits for us to walk into his trap, his entire empire burns to the ground. But Sophia will be rescued by a strike team that's been in position around that warehouse for the past 20 minutes. Dimitri showed her his phone screen, which displayed a real-time tactical map with red and blue dots moving in precise coordination. "Victor has 18 men with him. I have 47 surrounding the building." Eleanor stared at the screen, watching the blue dots, Dimitri's people, move into position with military precision. "You knew this would happen." "I hoped it would. Victor's been too careful, too protected by layers of legitimate business and political connections. I needed him to make a move that would justify eliminating him without legal complications." Dimitri's eyes found hers. "I never intended to use you as bait, Elena, but when he took Sophia, he gave me exactly the justification I needed." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were something else entirely: relief, gratitude, and a bone-deep amazement that someone with this much power had chosen to use it to protect her family. "You're going to save her," she whispered. "I'm going to save all of them. Every girl Victor has taken, every family he's threatened, every life he's destroyed." Dimitri's voice was quiet, implacable. "This ends tonight." Elena's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. The message contained a single photo. Sophia tied to a chair in what looked like an empty warehouse, fear stark in her young face. Below the image were GPS coordinates and a simple instruction: "Come alone or she dies." "He's getting impatient," Elena said, showing Dimitri the screen. Dimitri studied the photo for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Good. Impatience leads to mistakes. What if he hurts her while we're waiting? He won't. Dimitri's certainty was absolute. Sophia is his only leverage. Harming her serves no purpose until he has what he wants. Elena's phone rang again. This time it wasn't Victor. Elena? The voice was unfamiliar. Young, male, nervous. Who is this? My name is Marcus. I work for Mr. Volkov. I'm calling to let you know we have visual confirmation of your sister. She's alive and unharmed. Elena's knees went weak with relief. You can see her? Yes, ma'am. We're in position around the warehouse. On Mr. Volkov's order, we'll begin extraction in 15 minutes. Elena looked at Dmitri, who was watching her with those impossible amber eyes. How? I told you, he said simply. I've been hunting Victor for months. Did you think I'd do that without knowing exactly where he conducts his business? Elena felt something shift inside her chest, that golden warmth expanding until it filled every empty space in her heart. For 3 years she'd fought alone. For 3 years she'd believed that she and Sophia were invisible, disposable, forgotten by a world that didn't care about girls like them. But she'd been wrong. Dmitri had seen them, had cared enough to hunt their tormentor, to build a case, to position 47 fighters around a warehouse just in case the worst happened. Why? She whispered. Because you're mine. Dmitri said it simply, as if it explained everything, as if her safety and happiness were as necessary to him as breathing. Because I've spent 32 years alone, and I refuse to spend another day without you. Elena's breath caught. The mate bond hummed between them, that golden thread of connection that had terrified her just hours ago, but now felt like salvation, like coming home. I'm not ready to be a queen, she said quietly. You don't have to be, not yet. Dmitri's smile was soft, patient. But you do have to be mine, because I can't protect what I don't claim, Elena, and I will not lose you. Before Elena could respond, his phone rang. Dmitri answered on the first ring, his voice sharp with command. Report! Elena could hear the voice on the other end, crisp and professional. We have the package. Target is secure. No casualties on our side. Beginning clean-up operations now. Elena felt the last of her terror drain away, leaving her hollow and shaking. Sophia? Your sister is safe, Dmitri confirmed. She's being brought to my building now. Medical team is standing by to check her over, but initial reports suggest she's unharmed. Elena closed her eyes, overwhelmed by relief so intense it made her dizzy. 3 hours ago, she'd been a waitress serving drinks to criminals. Now she was sitting in the most exclusive restaurant in the city, while the Alpha King orchestrated the rescue of her sister and the destruction of their family's tormentors. What happens to Victor? She asked. Dmitri's expression went cold. Victor Morozov will not see morning. The finality in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Elena felt a fierce satisfaction burn through her chest. Victor had destroyed too many lives, caused too much pain. The world would be safer without him. And his men? The ones who surrendered are being questioned. The ones who didn't? Dmitri shrugged. There are consequences for trafficking children. Elena nodded, understanding. This was justice, not the kind that came from courts and lawyers and plea bargains, but the kind that came from strength and power and the willingness to use both in defense of the innocent. What happens now? She asked. Dmitri reached across the table and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. The contact sent that familiar golden warmth racing through her veins, but this time it felt like a promise rather than a surprise. Now you come home with me. Sophia comes home with us, and we start building the life we're meant to have together. Dmitri lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. If you'll have me. Elena stared at him. This impossibly beautiful, impossibly powerful man who'd moved mountains to keep her sister safe. A week ago, she would have said this was impossible. Fairy tales didn't happen to girls like her. But sitting here with his hand warm around hers and the knowledge that Sophia was safe because he'd made it so, Elena found herself believing in impossible things. Yes, she whispered, and watched Dimitri's smile transform his face from dangerous to devastating. "Yes, I'll have you." The warehouse looked exactly like what it was, a trap that had been sprung too late. Elena stood beside Dimitri outside the chain-link fence that surrounded the industrial complex, watching his pack members move through the building with methodical precision. Even from a distance, she could see the efficiency of their operation. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence, just swift justice delivered by professionals who understood exactly what needed to be done. "You didn't have to bring me here," she said quietly. Dimitri's amber eyes never left the warehouse. "Yes, I did. You needed to see him finished." Elena understood. For 3 years, Viktor Morozov had been the monster in the shadows, the threat that shaped every decision she made. Her subconscious would never believe he was truly gone unless she witnessed his end herself. A figure emerged from the warehouse, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace that marked him as one of Dimitri's inner circle. He approached them with the bearing of a soldier reporting to his commanding officer. "Alpha," the man said, inclining his head respectfully to Dimitri before offering Elena a gentler nod. "Ma'am?" "Report," Dimitri commanded. "Building secured. 17 hostiles down, 3 in custody for questioning. We recovered files documenting operations in 12 countries, financial records spanning 8 years, and contact information for buyers across 3 continents." Elena felt sick. The scope of Viktor's empire had been vast, reaching tentacles of suffering across the globe. And Viktor himself, Dimitri's voice was carefully neutral, eliminated while attempting to flee through the back exit. The man's expression was grim. "He drew on my team. We responded appropriately." Elena closed her eyes, feeling a weight she'd carried for 3 years finally lift from her shoulders. Viktor Morozov would never hurt another family, never steal another daughter, never turn love into leverage and safety into a weapon. "Good," Dimitri said simply. "What about the evidence?" "Being processed now. We'll have a complete picture of his network within 48 hours. The information should be sufficient to shut down operations in at least 6 other cities." Elena looked up at Dimitri in amazement. "You're going after his entire network?" "Every last piece of it." Dimitri's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Viktor was a cancer, Elena. You don't cure cancer by removing just one tumour." The clean-up continued for another hour. Elena watched pack members emerge carrying boxes of files, computer equipment, and other evidence that would help them track down Viktor's associates and victims alike. The efficiency was breathtaking. Within 90 minutes, they'd dismantled an operation that had been growing for years. When the last of his people reported in, Dimitri finally turned his full attention to Elena. "It's done." Elena stared at the warehouse, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. 3 hours ago, she'd been trapped in Viktor's web, helpless to protect even her own sister. Now his entire empire was ash, and she was standing beside the most powerful man in the supernatural world as his acknowledged mate. "I keep waiting to wake up," she admitted. Dimitri stepped closer, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "This isn't a dream, Elena. This is your life now. Our life." Before she could respond, another SUV pulled up to the perimeter. Elena's heart leapt as she recognized the figure climbing out of the back seat, Sophia, flanked by 2 of Dimitri's people, but walking under her own power, whole and unharmed. "Elena!" Sophia broke into a run, and Elena met her halfway, wrapping her sister in a fierce embrace that left them both crying. "I'm sorry," Sophia sobbed against her shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful, should have stayed at school." "No." Elena pulled back to cup Sophia's face, needing to see for herself that her sister was truly safe. "None of this was your fault? None of it?" Sophia's eyes were wide, overwhelmed. "Elena, I don't understand what's happening. These people, they're not human. I can smell things differently now, hear things I couldn't before. What's wrong with me?" Elena looked helplessly at Dmitri, who approached them with careful, non-threatening movements. Sophia tensed when she noticed him, but didn't try to run. "Sophia," Elena said gently, "this is Dmitri. He's the one who saved you." Sophia studied Dmitri with the directness that only teenagers possessed. "You're the Alpha King." Dmitri inclined his head. "I am, and you're experiencing the awakening of your shifter heritage. It's not wrong, Sophia. It's who you were always meant to be." "But we're human." "Your great-grandmother wasn't." Dimitri's voice was patient, educational. "Sometimes the blood skips generations, lying dormant until stress or trauma triggers its activation. What Victor put you through tonight was enough to wake what was already inside you." Eleanor felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Sophia's going to be a shifter. Eventually, the transition takes time and she'll need guidance, but yes. Dimitri's smile was gentle. "She'll be faster, stronger, and much harder to hurt than she was before. Victor's last gift to her, though not one he intended." Sophia looked between Elena and Dmitri, her young face serious. "And you two are mates." It wasn't a question. Elena felt heat bloom in her cheeks, but nodded. "Yes." "Good." Sophia's fierce protectiveness reminded Elena exactly why she'd been willing to die for her sister. "He'd better treat you right, or awaken shifter heritage or not, I'll find a way to make him regret it." Dimitri's laughter was warm, genuine. "I like her already." The drive back to Dimitri's building gave Elena time to process everything that had changed in the space of a few hours. She sat in the back seat of the armoured SUV, with Sophia's head on her shoulder, watching the city lights blur past the tinted windows. The same city she'd lived in her entire life, but somehow it looked different now, less threatening, full of possibilities instead of dangers. "What happens now?" Sophia asked sleepily. The adrenaline crash had hit her hard, and she was struggling to keep her eyes open. "Now you heal," Dmitri said from the front seat. "Both of you. You're safe now, Sophia. No one will ever threaten you again." "Promise?" "I promise." Eleanor felt tears burning behind her eyes at the absolute certainty in Dimitri's voice. He meant it. This wasn't a temporary protection or a conditional safety. This was permanent, unshakable, backed by the kind of power that could reshape reality itself. Dimitri's penthouse was exactly what Elena had expected, and nothing like she'd prepared for. It was enormous, elegantly appointed, but somehow still felt like a home rather than a showcase. The furniture was comfortable rather than merely expensive, and there were personal touches everywhere. Books, artwork, photographs of people who were clearly important to him. "The guest wing is down this hall," Dmitri said, leading them through the main living area. "Sophia, your room has a private bathroom and a balcony overlooking the park. Elena's room is adjoining, with a door between if you want privacy, but need to reach each other quickly." Elena blinked in surprise. "Separate rooms?" Dimitri's smile was soft, understanding. "You've been through trauma tonight, both of you. I'm not going anywhere, Elena, but you need time to process everything that's happened. When you're ready for more, you'll let me know." The consideration in his voice, the way he automatically put her comfort above his own desires, made Eleanor's chest tight with emotion. She'd never had someone care for her this way, not just protecting her, but understanding what she needed before she knew it herself. Sophia's room was beautiful, all soft blues and creams, with a window seat overlooking the city and a bookshelf already stocked with titles Elena recognised as her sister's favourites. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand and pyjamas laid out on the bed in exactly Sophia's size. "How?" Elena asked. "I had someone visit your apartment while we were at dinner," Dmitri explained. "Clothes, personal items, anything that might make you feel more at home. Your lease has been terminated and your deposit returned. You won't be going back there." Elena felt overwhelmed by the thoroughness of it all. He'd thought of everything, anticipated needs she hadn't even realised they would have. Sophia had fallen asleep almost before her head hit the pillow, exhausted by the night's events. Elena tucked her in gently, smoothing her sister's dark hair back from her face. In sleep, Sophia looked even younger than her 16 years, vulnerable in a way that made Eleanor's chest ache with protective love. "She'll be safe here," Dmitri said quietly from the doorway. "I know." Eleanor looked up at him, this man who'd become her entire world in the space of a single night. "You saved her. You saved both of us." "You saved yourselves. I just provided backup." Eleanor moved toward him slowly, drawn by the golden warmth that seemed to intensify whenever they were close. "I don't know how to do this, how to be your mate, your queen. I don't know the first thing about your world." "Then we'll learn together." Dmitri reached for her hands, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I've never had a mate either, Elena. I don't know how to share my life with someone, how to put another person's needs ahead of my own. We'll figure it out as we go." Elena looked up into his amber eyes and saw her future reflected there. Not the desperate hand-to-mouth existence she'd been living, but something bigger and brighter than anything she'd dared to imagine. "Kiss me," she whispered. Dimitri's eyes darkened, but he moved slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When his lips finally touched hers, Eleanor felt the mate bond flare to life between them, that golden thread of connection becoming a rope, then a chain, then something unbreakable that bound them together for eternity. The kiss was gentle, reverent, full of promise rather than demand. When they finally broke apart, Eleanor felt breathless, changed on some fundamental level. "Mine," Dmitri whispered against her forehead. "Yours," Elena agreed, and finally understood what it meant to come home. 3 months later, Elena woke to the scent of coffee and the sound of Sophia's laughter drifting through the penthouse. She stretched languidly in the massive bed she now shared with Dmitri, her body deliciously sore in all the best ways. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows painted everything in shades of gold, and for a moment she simply lay there, marvelling at how completely her life had transformed. 3 months ago, she'd been a terrified waitress working 3 jobs to keep herself and Sophia afloat. Now she was the acknowledged mate of the most powerful alpha in North America. Living in luxury she was still learning to accept, and for the first time in her life she felt truly safe. "Good morning, my queen." Dimitri's voice was rough with sleep as his arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against the solid warmth of his chest. Elena smiled, turning in his arms to face him. His dark hair was tousled, his amber eyes soft with the contentment that had become their morning ritual. She'd learned that the fearsome Alpha King was actually quite gentle in the quiet moments before the day began, when it was just the 2 of them tangled together in their bed. "Good morning," she murmured, pressing a soft kiss to the hollow of his throat. "Sophia sounds happy." "She should be. She starts advanced placement classes next week." Dimitri's pride in Sophia's achievements was evident in his voice. "And Marcus mentioned she's been helping with the integration program for rescued trafficking victims. She has a gift for making people feel safe." Elena's heart swelled with love for both of them, for Sophia, who'd not only survived her trauma, but was using her experience to help others, and for Dmitri, who'd embraced her sister as family with the same fierce protectiveness he showed Elena herself. Sophia's awakening shifter heritage had progressed smoothly over the past 3 months. She was faster now, stronger, her senses sharp enough to detect threats long before they became dangers. More importantly, she was happy in a way Elena hadn't seen since before their parents died. The exclusive private school Dmitri had enrolled her in specialized in supernatural students, and Sophia had found her tribe among other young shifters, learning to control their abilities. "What's on the agenda today?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Dimitri's days were carefully structured around pack business, territorial negotiations, and the ongoing efforts to dismantle the remaining pieces of Victor's trafficking network. Meetings until noon, then we're interviewing the final candidates for the Victim Advocacy Centre. Dimitri's hand stroked down her spine, and Elena shivered at the contact. "You don't have to sit in on all of them if you'd rather." "I want to." Elena had discovered that she had strong opinions about how to help trafficking victims rebuild their lives, probably because she understood what it felt like to live in constant fear. These women need to know that someone who's been where they are is fighting for them. Dimitri's smile was proud, loving. "Have I mentioned lately that you're going to be an extraordinary queen?" Elena felt heat bloom in her cheeks. She was still adjusting to that reality, that in 6 weeks she would officially become Dimitri's mate and queen in a ceremony that would be attended by pack leaders from across 3 countries. The magnitude of it still took her breath away sometimes. "I'm terrified I'll embarrass you," she admitted. Impossible." Dimitri rolled over, pinning her gently beneath him, his eyes blazing with sincerity. "Do you know what the pack leaders say about you?" Eleanor shook her head. "They say you're the Alpha King's secret weapon, that you can negotiate treaties they'd been fighting over for years because you understand what it means to protect family." Dimitri's thumb traced her cheekbone. "They say you're proof that strength isn't just about physical power. It's about the courage to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. 3 months ago, she'd believed she was nothing special. Now she was learning to see herself through Dimitri's eyes and through the eyes of people who'd watched her work tirelessly to help other victims find their footing in a new world. "Kiss me," she whispered. Dimitri obliged, his mouth claiming hers with the passion that never seemed to fade between them. The mate bond hummed with contentment, that golden thread of connection that had become as natural as breathing. When they finally broke apart, Eleanor could hear Sophia's voice more clearly from the kitchen, and she realised her sister was on the phone with someone. "Mum would have loved this," Sophia was saying, her voice warm with happiness. "She always said Elena was meant for something bigger than our neighbourhood could hold, and Dad would have been impossible about the whole Alpha King thing. You know how protective he was." Eleanor's breath caught. Sophia rarely talked about their parents anymore, the loss too fresh and painful even 3 years later. But there was joy in her voice now, instead of just grief, as if she could finally remember their love without drowning in the tragedy of their deaths. "She's talking to Maria from school," Dimitri said quietly, noticing Elena's emotional reaction. "They're working on a presentation about family trauma recovery for their psychology class." Elena smiled through her tears. "She's going to change the world. She already has. Both of you have." Dimitri pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Come on, we should get up before she decides to come looking for us." Elena laughed, remembering the morning 2 weeks ago when Sophia had barged into their room without knocking, taken one look at them tangled together in bed, and announced that she was emotionally scarred for life, before retreating with dramatic flair. They dressed quickly, Elena in one of the designer outfits that had slowly replaced her thrift store wardrobe, Dimitri in the perfectly tailored suits that made him look every inch the powerful leader he was. Elena was still adjusting to having clothes that fit properly, shoes that didn't pinch, jewellery that wasn't costume pieces from discount stores. In the kitchen, Sophia was indeed on the phone, but she brightened when she saw them. At 17 now, she'd grown into her supernatural heritage with remarkable grace. She was taller, more confident, her dark eyes bright with intelligence and purpose. "I have to go," Sophia said into the phone. "Yeah, I'll see you at school. Tell Jackson I said good luck with his control exercises." She hung up and grinned at them. "Good morning, lovebirds. Try to keep the mating bond displays to a minimum this early in the day." Elena felt her cheeks heat, but Dimitri just laughed. "Good morning, brat. Ready for your final placement exams?" "Please, I've been ready since last month." Sophia's confidence was infectious. "Although I did want to ask, would it be okay if I brought Jackson to the mating ceremony? He's my study partner, and he's been helping me with control techniques." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Study partner?" Sophia's cheeks went pink. Okay, fine. He's also really cute and makes me laugh, and he might be my mate, but we're waiting until I'm 18 to explore that, because Dimitri's influence has made you ridiculously overprotective. Dimitri choked on his coffee. I have not. You ran a background check on him, Sophia pointed out. His family tree goes back 4 generations in your files. That's standard protocol for anyone entering pack territory. His favourite colour and food allergies are also in there. Eleanor burst out laughing at Dimitri's sheepish expression. Jackson is welcome at the ceremony, but you're right about the overprotective thing. I'm sitting right here, Dimitri muttered. We love you anyway, Sophia said cheerfully, dropping a quick kiss on his cheek as she headed toward the door. I'm meeting Maria and Jackson for breakfast before school. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That leaves us a lot of options, Elena called after her. I'm 17, not dead, Sophia's voice echoed from the hallway. I have a very healthy imagination. Elena shook her head, still smiling. She's going to be impossible when she's officially an adult. She's going to be extraordinary, Dimitri corrected, just like her sister. Elena moved into his arms, still marvelling at how perfectly she fit against him. Do you ever regret it, taking on a human mate and her teenage sister? Never. Dimitri's voice was absolute, certain. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Elena. Both of you. You've turned this place into a home instead of just a headquarters. Elena thought about that as they finished breakfast and prepared for their day. 3 months ago she'd been surviving. Now she was living, really living, with purpose and love and a future that stretched out before them, bright with possibility. The Victim Advocacy Centre had been her idea, born from late-night conversations with other trafficking survivors about what they really needed to rebuild their lives. Not just shelter and food, but job training, therapy, legal advocacy, and most importantly, the knowledge that they weren't alone in their recovery. The final interview is at 2, Dimitri mentioned as they rode the elevator down to his offices. Dr. Sarah Chen, she's been working with trauma survivors for 15 years, specialises in PTSD and rebuilding trust. Elena nodded, reviewing the candidate's file in her mind. They'd already interviewed 12 people for the director position, but none of them had quite understood what Elena was trying to achieve. What if she's not right either? Elena asked. Then we keep looking until we find someone who is. Dimitri squeezed her hand. This matters too much to settle for anything less than perfect. The morning meetings flew by in a blur of territorial disputes and resource allocation discussions. Elena had discovered that she had an intuitive understanding of pack dynamics, perhaps because she'd spent years navigating dangerous social situations as a survival mechanism. When Dr. Chen arrived for her interview, Elena knew within minutes that they'd found their director. The woman was calm, competent, and most importantly, she listened to Elena's vision without trying to reshape it into something more conventional. The survivors need to see that recovery is possible, Doctor, Chen said, her dark eyes serious. But they also need practical support, job training, legal advocacy, safe housing that doesn't feel like another form of imprisonment. Exactly. Eleanor leaned forward. Too many programs focus on what was done to these women without recognizing their strength in surviving it. You speak from experience. Elena glanced at Dimitri, who nodded encouragingly. My family was targeted by traffickers. If it weren't for Dimitri, my sister and I would have become statistics instead of survivors. Dr. Chen studied Elena with newfound respect. And now you want to make sure other families don't face that alone. Now I want to make sure they have every possible resource to fight back. By the time the interview ended, Elena was certain they'd found the right person. Dr. Chen had the experience, the passion, and most importantly, the understanding that healing wasn't about forgetting trauma. It was about reclaiming power. She's perfect, Elena told Dimitri as they walked back to his office. I agree. Should I make the offer? Yes. And Dimitri? Elena turned to face him. Thank you for believing in this, for believing in me. Dimitri stopped walking and pulled her into his arms, right there in the hallway where anyone could see. I will always believe in you, Elena. You're going to change more lives than you can imagine. That evening, Elena stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city, Sophia beside her as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The same city where they'd once lived in fear now spread out below them like a kingdom they were meant to protect. "Are you happy?" Sophia asked quietly. Elena thought about the question seriously. 3 months ago, she would have defined happiness as simply making it through another day without disaster. Now she understood that happiness was so much bigger than mere survival. "Yes," she said finally. "Are you?" "I'm in love with my life," Sophia said with teenage intensity. "I'm learning to be something I never imagined possible. I'm helping people. I have Jackson, who makes me laugh even when I'm having nightmares about that warehouse, and I have you, happy and safe and about to marry the man who saved us both." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. Mom and Dad would be so proud of you. They'd be proud of both of us. Sophia leaned against Elena's shoulder. "We survived, Elena. We did more than survive. We built something beautiful from the ashes." Elena thought about that as the last light faded from the sky and the city lights began to twinkle like stars. They had survived. They'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to them and transformed it into a foundation for helping others. "Elena?" Dimitri's voice came from behind them, warm and familiar. She turned to find him holding a small velvet box, his amber eyes blazing with love and determination. "I know we're already mated," he said, dropping to one knee on the balcony. "I know the ceremony is planned and the contracts are signed, but I wanted to do this properly. I wanted to ask you, with your sister here to witness it, if you'll do me the honour of being my wife." Eleanor's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a ring that was absolutely perfect. Not ostentatious or overwhelming, but elegant and timeless, with a central diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. "It was my grandmother's," Dimitri said quietly. "She was the only queen in our pack's history who ruled in her own right instead of just as a consort. I thought you should have her ring." Elena stared down at him, this impossibly powerful man who dropped to his knees on a balcony to propose to her properly, even though they both knew her answer. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Dimitri, always yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly, then stood to kiss her as Sophia cheered behind them. "Finally!" Sophia exclaimed. "I was wondering when you were going to get around to that." Elena laughed against Dimitri's mouth, overwhelmed by happiness so intense it felt like she might burst from the sheer joy of it. 3 months ago, she'd been trapped in a life that felt like a prison. Now she was engaged to the Alpha King, about to become queen of the largest supernatural territory in North America, and building something that would help countless other survivors find their own paths to freedom. "I love you," she whispered to Dimitri. "I love you too," he replied. "My queen, my mate, my everything." Elena looked out over the city that had once been her cage and now felt like her kingdom, Sophia's hand warm in hers and Dimitri's arms strong around them both. She was home. Where are you listening from? I hope this story of Elena and Sophia's journey from survival to belonging has touched your heart. Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts about these characters and their transformation from trapped victims to powerful survivors. If you'd like to support me and hear more stories like this one, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people discover these tales of love triumphing over fear.